The other thing which, it goes back to what does true leadership mean? This whole concept of care is becoming paramount. And I think that is what is separating the really good leaders or effective leaders from the ones who also rants, right? And they are the ones who care for the individual, not just as someone who's working on their team in the organization, with that same clarity of purpose and be able to make decisions, which that then moves the whole organization forward, not just a cog in the wheel.
Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we sit down with executive leaders to explore what leadership really means through the lens of their stories, their wins, their struggles, their vision, and their lessons along the way. I'm Ty Hammond, founder of One Mountain Leadership and creator of the True Leadership Approach, an awareness-based path that helps leaders shift their focus from what to do about their problems to how to grow from them. Whether you're just stepping into leadership or are well-seasoned and at the top of your game, your potential won't be realized following someone else's script, but you can draw insights from their stories and turn it into wisdom by putting it into practice in your own life.
Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we explore the essence of leadership beyond tactics and performance by sitting down with executives to hear what matters most to them. I'm your host, Jessy James, and today's guest is Deboleena Bose. Deboleena is a human-centered executive and chief human resource officer known for leading global business and culture transformations that drive profitable growth. With senior leadership experience at GE, Whirlpool, Wipro, and CoBank, she has guided organizations through high-growth cycles, turnarounds, and technology-driven change across North America, Europe, and Asia. A trusted advisor to boards and CEOs, Deboleena specializes in enterprise transformation, workforce strategy, and preparing organizations for an AI-enabled future of work. She's deeply passionate about building leadership cultures that blend performance development and purpose to create sustainable, people-centered impact. Deboleena, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Thanks, Jessy. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. So, Debbie, who is someone from your early life or even an early experience that you had that shaped the kind of leader that you are today?
My father, who, was engineer by training, but then moved into HR in his latter part of his career. And he's one of the reasons I chose to go to school to study HR. And what I realized as I watched him is how he treated people. He really valued everyone, no matter what they did, which professions they were in. He respected them, he welcomed their views, and really listened. And I realized that that's kind of where my early training of how to create inclusive environments where you bring in diversity of thought, of diversity of perspective, is what I valued.
What does true leadership mean to you, Deb?
To me, it's all about caring. It's about believing that your role or my role as a leader is to really enable people around me to do their best work. It starts by connecting the individual's talent and their passion with the opportunities that the organization can provide. And that's the way that you enable people to have their career best. I believe that true leadership is kind. So in the same vein, if the talent and opportunity don't match anymore, then communicating that to the individual with care is also part of leadership.
Can you share about a time when you realized that your way of leading or living no longer met the demands of your work and life and growth was needed?
Yeah, Jessy, as I've continued to grow in my career and continue to have more gray hairs, I have realized that, having uncomfortable times is really what makes you grow and stretch, right? Challenges Failures are ones that help us to get to the next level. So when I look at how I have learned and grown, there's been so many. So it's difficult to pick few, but I'll try. And I think my first leadership role was a big growth. I hired everybody who was just like me, and it was a spectacular failure. And I realized that in order to truly get to the next level, I had to have people who would challenge me, who would be different than I am. And pulling everybody together is what good leaders do. The next one that I was something which shaped me a lot was my first global role. I had grown up in India, and when I first moved to the US in a global role, I was really unsure that whether my perspectives and how I had assessed talent in my home country would translate to a global stage. So much so that I would have my colleague, who is another very kind woman, sit with me as we did interviews so that she could tell me later if my assessment of the person was accurate. Great learning experience, couldn't have done it without her. The next one was my first talent role. I had never been anything but an HR business partner. And in my first talent role, it was strange because, as a business partner, you're solving problems and you're connected to the rhythm of the business so much that it's very fast. And then suddenly in a talent role, I had to sit down and think about what's the strategy? What's the framework? So coming from this very high impact, high pressure role and going into one where I had to think about strategy, I had to slow down, I had to really, take a pause and be in a position where people were not coming to me with problems every day was another growth. So like that, there've been so many. That's why I actually enjoy going to multiple industries, because it always is challenging and I don't know anything and I have to challenge myself, and then that makes me grow.
Yeah. I think it's a rare trait to really celebrate these challenges in the sense of taking a pause and reflecting. What's your process of doing that?
I have found that you need to have a good network of people who are your truth tellers, right? And there are some who have been my truth tellers for years, pretty much since, I started my professional career. And also when I go into these situations, I find truth tellers because I'm genuinely curious and I go into it with the humility that I want to learn. So being able to cultivate that and being able to truly be open and transparent as to why you're seeking feedback, what do you hope to grow from, then that gives permission to people around you to be honest and help you with that feedback.
Got it. Thinking about your journey over the past few years, what's been the most valuable investment that you've made in yourself and in your growth?
So I had a milestone birthday a few years ago. And then when I went to the doctor, I realized some of my numbers were terrible. And, I suddenly realized that I needed to take my health very seriously. So I invested in actually being thoughtful about wellness, about exercising regularly. What it did is it helped me slow down. It actually, instead of reacting in the heat of the moment, if there is a difficult conversation or a tough meeting or a pile of work that you have to get to or deadlines, I realized stepping back and even taking a walk or going and getting a Pilates class or whatever it is would really help slow me down. And then it helped me crystallize what is the critical few that I needed to prioritize. So that in itself was very helpful. What started out as something which was investing in my well-being turned out to also be helpful in my leadership style.
What's your vision for your leadership, your legacy, or the impact that you want to have in the years ahead?
Yeah. Jessy, I had a fabulous boss. He was one of my big sponsors very early in my career. And he used to say, if your plan is for 1 year, plant rice. If your plan is for 10 years, plant trees. But if your plan is for 100 years, grow people. So that's what I have taken away. And as I continue, I want to nurture really the human potential as I continue to build high performance cultures in the organizations that I work in.
Fantastic. In your experience, what is separating leaders who are truly effective right now from those who aren't?
Yeah. Leadership right now is very tough, right? Like if I think about our environment today, there's rapid technology changes happening. There's a lot of geopolitical instability. There's economic volatility, right? So one is leaders have to be focused on what is the best thing to do for their organization. So that clarity of purpose is very important, right? And clarity of purpose then articulates what you have to do in terms of strategy. The other thing, which it goes back to what I was talking about, from what does true leadership mean, right? This whole concept of care is becoming paramount. And I think that is what is separating the really good leaders or effective leaders, however you call it, from the ones who, what I would say is also rans, right? And they are the ones who care for the individual, not just as someone who's working on their team in the organization, but they're able to care for that individual with that same clarity of purpose and be able to make decisions, which that then moves the whole organization forward, right? So not just a cog in the wheel, but I care about you because you are Jessy with your experiences and your skills and your strengths and your development areas. And that is what separates.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Fills my heart. Kind of the good to great difference that you talked about. Loved it. The last question is more of an invitation, Deb. You have this time and space to share whatever it is that's top of the mind and heart for you with our listeners. The floor is
Thanks,
yours.
Jessy. Yes, I was thinking about this a lot. Look, we just talked about what is the differentiator, right, in leadership right now. I think, I more and more gravitate towards this concept of kind leadership. I'm not talking about nice leadership. I'm talking about kind leadership. And to me, leaders need to pause and think and see how are they coming across, because they have outsized impact on people's lives, right? I always think of, there's a quote by Maya Angelou that always, has struck me. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will not forget how you made them feel. And I think as leaders continue to navigate the challenges of today and tomorrow, I think being able to keep that front and center, and I think of that myself all the time, how you're making people feel is going to be your lasting legacy.
Deb, I appreciate the wisdom that you shared here today with me and with our listeners. I've gotten so much out of this conversation, and I'm sure that whoever's listening will benefit equally from what you've shared. Thank you so much for coming on the True Leadership Podcast.
Thanks, Jessy. Thanks for the invitation. I enjoyed sharing my few thoughts.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of the True Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this to catch future episodes. This conversation was brought to you by One Mountain Leadership, where we help leaders grow the capacity, confidence, and presence of true leadership through the True Leadership approach. To learn more about the approach, our offerings, our community, and how we can help you realize your potential in both leadership and in life, visit us at onemountainleadership.com.